All right, 15-second warning. All right, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. I've always wanted to say that. We are back for the final portion of today's programming, Bringing Them Back from the Edge. Pretty cool title, I think. First off, let's give a warm welcome to the moderator for this portion, or the interviewer. Let's welcome back the man with a social media moral compass, Mr. Bill Ottman. Wrong seat, Bill. I don't blame you. And now, we have a very special guest joining us. Daryl Davis is an American R&B and blues musician, actor, author, and activist. Known for his energetic style of boogie-woogie piano, I assume I'm doing that right, Davis has played with such musicians as Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, B.B. King, Bruce Hornsby, and Bill Clinton. On top of all of his musical exploits, he has made monumental strides in improving race relations by engaging with members of the KKK to de-radicalize over 250 people. We'll clap for him later. These efforts have been highlighted by CNN, NPR, and in the Washington Post, while his TED Talk has generated millions of views, and if you haven't seen it, please do so after this. Now, I lost my place. That's all right. He perfectly summarizes the goals of this conference, of course. With this advice, establish dialogue. When two enemies are talking, they are not fighting. And now, give an even bigger round of applause to Mr. Daryl Davis.
Daryl had mechanical failures on one plane, just got here in the nick of time. Whew, damn.
Glad to be here.
So, Daryl, I'm curious, how are you feeling the reaction is to your work these days, and how has it changed over time?
Well, it's a mixed bag. Anytime you do something that goes against the norm, it's not normal for black people to go to Klan rallies and talk to the KKK or neo-Nazis. You get a lot of criticism from all sides. I've been called everything but my name, but I've also proven that it works by the amount of Nazi flags I have, KKK robes and hoods, and people who've left those organizations, and people who will come out with me and stand on a platform and speak out against their former organization and that ideology. So it can work, and you have to remember that people like Copernicus, the astronomer, and Galileo. Copernicus was put in prison for saying that the earth revolves around the sun, when we all believed that we were the center of the universe and the sun revolved around the earth. He proved it differently, and he was the first. And then later Galileo, but they called him a heretic and put him in jail. They told Columbus he was crazy because he said the earth was round, and they all thought the earth was flat. You're gonna fall off the edge. So anytime you do something that goes against the norm and the popular belief, you are subject to criticism until you can prove it. And what's funny is, 30 years ago, I started this. I didn't just start it since the last election or since Charlottesville or things like that. I've been doing this work for just over 30 years. And 30 years ago, when I started, people said I was crazy, and they shunned me. You're getting involved with with white supremacists and all that kind of stuff. Why would you sit down and have dinner with those people? Why would you even talk to them? That kind of thing. And they began avoiding me. Today, 30 years later, they're all calling me, Daryl, what's going on, man? You know those people. What's going on with them? So you see how it works.
Do you feel like things are better or worse than 30 years ago?
Oh, things are definitely better than 30 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. But let's make no mistake about it. We have come a very long ways, but we still have a long ways to go. And not just on the racial thing. I mean, on discrimination in general. I mean, still here in the 21st century, women are still making 79 cents on a man's dollar. That's got to change. So we discriminate against the elderly. We discriminate against gender and races and religion. So, this has to change. And what's interesting is perhaps, we are the most technologically advanced country in the world. We call ourselves the greatest nation on the face of this earth. I'm a patriot. I'm an American. I love my country. But I have a few misgivings about that statement. Perhaps we are the greatest technologically. We put a man on the moon. We invented that technology to put him up there. And while he was up there walking around talking about Neil Armstrong, and he was talking about one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, we were able to talk to Neil Armstrong live from right here on Earth all the way to the moon via satellite radio phone. We invented that technology. Everybody in here has email. Everybody in here has a cell phone. You hit a few numbers or words, hit send. You're talking to people all over the world. We invented that technology. So how is it that we who are so technologically advanced that we're able to talk to people as far away as the moon or anywhere on the face of this planet have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door because he or she is a different skin color, a different religion, a different persuasion, whatever? It seems to me that before we can call ourselves the greatest, our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And once we get them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are.
So in your documentary, there's a really powerful scene when you're talking with two Black Lives Matter activists and they walk out on you. Mm-hmm. And they, I'm really curious, what is their strategy? What have you heard any compelling evidence from the other side that makes you question what you're doing?
Okay. Well, first, let's talk about Black Lives Matter and define that first, and then we'll talk about that scene. Black Lives Matter. The idea behind creating it was an excellent idea. And the purpose for it was to put the national spotlight on the plight of black men who, for lack of a better term, were being murdered by white police officers for holding their cell phone, for holding their wallet, things like that, where a white person in the same situation either got to go home or go to jail. Black men got to go to their grave. So they wanted to put the national spotlight on that so something could be addressed. Now, that national spotlight idea came from Martin Luther King, and that started with the bus boycott in 1955 with Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on the bus. Rosa Parks was not the first black woman who refused to give up her seat on the bus. There were others, and it was happening all the time. In fact, years later, I spoke with that bus driver. You all don't know his name. I'm going to tell you what his name was. His name was James Blake. James Blake was the bus driver who had Rosa Parks arrested. What James Blake would do in Montgomery, Alabama, with the Montgomery bus lines, if you were black, you had to get on the bus in the front, put your token in, get off the bus, walk outside the bus, down the side, and come back in through the back door and take your seat in the back of the bus. You could not walk down the center of the bus if you were black. And oftentimes what he would do is a black man would put his token in, get off the bus, walk down the side, put his foot up on the step to get back in the back door. James Blake would pull the handle and close the door on his leg and drag him up the street. And no penalty was ever paid for that. And that went on quite a bit. And there were people who refused to give up their seat. But this was going on and nothing was being done because there was no national spotlight on it. So Martin Luther King and some others chose Rosa Parks to be on that bus and to be arrested. And that national spotlight was put on there so everybody could see what was going on. And after 1 year of that boycott, Montgomery, Alabama, bus lines decided, hey, you know what? We're not making any money because most of the riders on the bus were black. You know, white people had cars, so they had to drive into town, pick up their domestic workers, drive them out to wherever to work. And the buses were running around empty, not making any money. So Montgomery bus lines decided to change and allow black people to sit wherever they wanted to sit. As a result of that change, other cities in the South said, you know what, maybe we better change too, otherwise King will be in our town. So that changed it. The national spotlight changed it. So that was the impetus for Black Lives Matter, to put the national spotlight on the plight of these black people who were being shot and going to their grave. Now, the problem, and this is my opinion, and I don't speak for all black people, this is my opinion. I think the mistake made was not trademarking the name Black Lives Matter or centralizing the organization. And as a result, you have all these different groups of Black Lives Matter all over the country, 80-some groups, and they all are autonomous. There is no centralization, like, say, the NAACP, the Boy Scouts of America, the Red Cross, where you have a central headquarters, policy is created there and disseminated to all the chapters, so each chapter is on the same page. That is not the case with Black Lives Matter. There are chapters in Detroit, Michigan, chapters in New York that call me and email me and say, hey, you know, do you give workshops? Can you teach us to do what you do? Things like that. And then there are other chapters who just rip me apart for what I do. So there's no, continuity, no consistency. And as a result, when you have all this division, it's like having too many chefs in the kitchen trying to cook the same thing. Each one has a different recipe, and you defeat your own purpose. So that to me is an issue with Black Lives Matter. So now, to address what Bill was saying, in the documentary Accidental Courtesy, there's a scene that is about 8 minutes long in the documentary. This scene went on for about an hour, and it was highly controversial, almost exploded into violence, unfortunately, where I was meeting with some Black Lives Matter people, and they were ripping me apart for what I do with neo-Nazis and KKK people. And I get it, but they were not prepared for what I did. They had not been given any information, so I'm not going to fault them for that. They had a misperception. In fact, the one guy, the first thing he says in the movie when he sees me is, "I understand you're the first black member of the KKK." Well, very, very misinformed. If there were black members of the KKK, there wouldn't be a KKK. Okay, so it'd be the OKKK, right? There was that misinformation, and they were reacting to some of that. However, now, if I were to see, if you go on the internet and Google me and KKK, you'll see 1,000 pictures of me standing with robed and hooded Klansmen or neo-Nazis or whatever, shaking hands or whatever. Does not mean that I support their ideology by any means. But if I were to see a picture like that, I would have a visceral reaction. Like, what is going on here? Why is this black guy shaking this robed and hooded Klansman's hand? But me, I would read the backstory to find out what is going on here. So some people don't bother to read that backstory, and they have that visceral reaction and then just jump to a conclusion. and make up their own mind. And that's where that went that day. But they later reached out to me about a year later, and we got together and had dinner, and now we're all friends.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it really is a matter of education, and they just weren't informed, and it's a well-intentioned emotional response.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, what's the most recent Klan rally that you've been to?
I go to them all the time. But I'll tell you what I did most recently. There was, you remember Charlottesville, okay? A lot of things went on in Charlottesville that day where a young lady was murdered when a white supremacist got inside his car and drove at full speed through the crowd, trying to murder as many people as he could. And he succeeded in injuring 20 people and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer. Another scene that day was a group of Klansmen were coming down the steps of the Confederate Park. And they had a Confederate flagpole, and they were lashing out at this black guy down at the bottom of the steps, and he was trying to set them on fire with a flamethrower. So you had this controversy there, right? Well, the imperial wizard of that, imperial wizard, if you don't know what it means, an imperial wizard means a national leader. A grand dragon means a state leader. So the imperial wizard was coming around the corner when this happened. He had just passed them as the guy was lighting the flame. He turned around and he saw the guy pointing the flame at his Klan members coming down the steps. And he pulled out a gun and he pointed it at the head of the black flamethrower and shouted, "Hey, nigger." And then he lowered the gun and fired it. And the bullet went into the ground near the flamethrower's feet. The Charlottesville Police Department was standing about 10 feet away and did absolutely nothing but stand there and watch. And for that, the Charlottesville police chief was fired. And now they have a new police chief in Charlottesville. But when I saw that, I thought, this is crazy. Our country can only become one of two things. It can become that which we sit back and let it become, or it can become that which we stand up and make it become. So, you all have to answer this question. You don't have to answer it right now, but by the time you all get home tonight, or wherever you're staying, have an answer. Ask yourself this: do I want to sit back and see what my country becomes? Or do I want to stand up and make my country become what I want to see? Okay? So, thank you. I chose the latter. Because I want to tell you something. Listen, Philadelphia may not be Charlottesville, Virginia. Where I was last night giving a talk, Albuquerque, New Mexico, may not be Charlottesville, Virginia. But if you are an American, Charlottesville, Virginia is your city, as much as Philadelphia, Albuquerque, New York City, Los Angeles, my hometown, Chicago, or where I live now, Silver Spring. Any American city is your city. So whatever problems Charlottesville has, you have. And don't think what happened in Charlottesville could not happen right here. You saw it happen in Pittsburgh, didn't you? A few months ago when the guy walked into the synagogue. Okay, so I thought, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna call that guy up. I called up that imperial wizard, and I said, listen, man, you and I need to get together and talk. Not Klansman to black man, but man to man, American to American. Your Confederate history is as much a part of my black history as my black history is a part of your history. We both are Americans. We need to explore American history together. Let's listen to each other. So after talking with him on the phone, he agreed. We set a date. I drove to his house about an hour and a half from me, and I sat in his living room with him and his Klanslady fiance. He had Confederate stuff all over the place. I sat on this Confederate blanket on the couch, KKK stuff all over. And I listened for 2 hours. I was there by myself. I listened for 2 hours to him give me a history lesson on American history from a Confederate perspective, of course. When it was my turn, I said, here's what I want to do. I want to invite you and the Klanslady, your fiance, we'll set a date. You guys come down to my house. Silver Spring, Maryland is about 15 minutes from Washington, D.C. I said, you all come down to my house, and I will arrange tickets, and we will go down to the new Smithsonian National Museum of African American Heritage and Culture, and let's tour that museum together. He said, okay. So I arranged tickets. They drove down to my house. We sat around my house a little bit. They got in my car. We drove down to D.C. to this museum. We toured the museum for about 2.5 hours, looking at displays on slavery, integration, segregation, blacks in the arts, blacks in medicine, science, education, etc. And then he's a big rock and roll fan, this guy, this Imperial Wizard. His favorite artist was Elvis Presley. Now, I love Elvis Presley. I met Elvis Presley twice. I saw him 14 times, and I went to his funeral. But without the man who invented rock and roll, the late, great Charles Edward Anderson Berry, better known to most of you as Chuck Berry, there wouldn't be an Elvis Presley, a Beatles, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Elton John, all right? Anybody who plays rock music, all their DNA goes back to Chuck Berry, all right? I played piano for Chuck Berry for 32 years. Now, so one of Chuck Berry's Cadillacs is in this museum. So I took them to see the Cadillac. I saw it at Chuck's house, but I took them to see the Cadillac. And after the tour, we went outside. I gave the Klanslady my cell phone and had her take a picture of the Imperial Wizard and myself. The guy threw his arms around me and hugged me. We posted this picture. Now, this was almost a year later than Charlottesville after he said, hey, nigger, boom, okay? This is what dialogue can do. This is what sitting and listening to each other can do. You don't have to agree, but agree to sit down and let the other person say what they got to say. You may not agree with it, but that's fine. Everybody wants to be heard. And if you allow them that space to be heard, there's a good chance they will reciprocate and allow you to be heard. Okay, so now, thank you. It went a little deeper than that. Check this out. You'd be surprised how things evolve. I was not even expecting this, okay? So, we did the picture. Now, a few weeks later, the Imperial Wizard and his fiancée, the Klanslady, they're gonna get married. Now, I've been dealing with him for a year since, Charlottesville. So, we had a nice friendship. So, naturally, I get invited to the wedding. Yeah, I'm the one there without the robe and hood, right? So, but it went deeper than that, okay? Huh? No. You all didn't hear what this guy right here said. He said, did he make me sit in the back? I swear, this is the God's honest truth. It went just the opposite, okay? The Klanslady, she's from Tennessee. Her father was unable to travel from Tennessee up to Maryland to give his daughter away. Rather than ask one of their trusted Klan members to walk the bride down the aisle, they asked me. Yes. Okay? Now, I said, okay, I'll do it. I walked her down the aisle, and I gave her away to the Imperial Wizard. okay? So I was, the surrogate father, right? Now, this guy, he still has a little ways to go. People don't change overnight. When you're raised with a certain ideology for however many years you've been raised in it, it may take a little while to eradicate it. It's not like a light switch.
Do you have an average? Is there an average amount of time that you see that it takes?
No, because human beings are far from average. We all are individuals, and some get it a little sooner, some get it a little later. But at least now he is going in the right direction, and that's what's important. He's now going in the right direction, and we are friends. Okay, so that's if you want to see that sequence, you can see it. If you Google me, Google Daryl Davis TED Talk Big Sky. Big Sky is in Montana. There are about 4 different TED Talks on YouTube, but check out the one that says Big Sky, and you'll see that whole sequence with the wedding and the museum and all that kind of thing. So that's what I do. Thank you.
Have you worked with other types of radical individuals other than KKK people?
Yeah, there are black supremacists as well. There are neo-Nazis, alt-right, but listen, a rose by any other name is still a rose. You can call it a supremacist, a separatist, an alt-right, whatever, a nationalist. It all comes down to the same thing. And, let's, first of all, there are some subtle differences, but at the end of the day, here's the thing. Back in the day, the Klan was the first organization in this country like that. It was formed in 1865, all right, at the end of the Civil War. The term was white supremacy. I'm a white supremacist. And that was an honorable thing for white men to join, or so they thought. And then later they would include females, all right? But with the white supremacy came a lot of atrocities, lynchings, bombings of people's houses and churches, dragging people behind cars, murders, etc. And while there were a lot of racist white people who did not like black people, there were a number of them who did not want to be involved in murder or mayhem, and they began dropping out, either for moral reasons or they didn't want to go to jail or whatever. So the membership of the organization began to shrink. So the term white supremacy became unpalatable. All right, so they had to come up with another term. And so they came up with the term white separatism. I'm a white separatist. I don't hate black people. I don't hate Jewish people. I just love my own. Black people can have their own schools, their own neighborhoods, their own swimming pool and restaurant, and we should be able to have ours. And Jews can have theirs, and we don't have to mix. So in other words, separate but equal, right? So that never happened. But people like that idea. Hey, yeah, I believe in that. I don't want to associate with them, but I don't want to kill them. So here, yeah, I'll join. Sign me up. So now the membership exploded again, and it increased. But along with the increase in membership, you had the violence kept creeping back in, and you had that murder and that mayhem and those atrocities. So people began dropping out again. So once again, they had to change the name because now white supremacy and white separatism were no longer palatable. So now they come up with the name, I'm a white nationalist. I believe in white nationalism. Well, anybody who likes their country is a nationalist, right? We all are nationalists. We like our country. So why do you have to say, I'm a white nationalist? What's that all about? Or a black nationalist? Why can't you just be a nationalist? Okay? So it changed to white nationalism. And people signed up for that. Yeah, I like my country. I'm a patriot, So membership increased again. And then here comes the violence. And so now they changed the name once more to alt-right. But like I said, a rose by any other name is still a rose.
So are you tracking numbers? Like, do you feel like this is an empirical thing that we can if with enough people like you, we can actually weed it out fully? Like, how many members of KKK are there?
No one knows for sure because, they're very transient. They'll join the KKK. If they don't get satisfied, they might go join some other neo-Nazi movement or some other kind of, supremacist movement. So that, it's very hard. The SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, and the ADL, which tracks, what they call hate groups, they estimate, the numbers vary anywhere between 6,000 and 12,000, and that number goes up and down because it's so transient. And of course, the Klan today, back in the day, the Klan was centralized, but today they are not centralized. Each Klan group is autonomous. They all have an imperial wizard, a grand dragon, etc. So there's no centralization. And what's interesting is this: if you see different Klan groups together out in public, they will hold a unified front. But behind closed doors, they are rivals with each other. They don't like each other. Because, when you hate somebody, basically you're hating yourself. And also what's interesting is this, the Klan is not confined, as many people believe, to just the South. It's all over, all right? And in fact, the two states that have the most chapters is this state right here, Pennsylvania, and yes, right, and North Carolina. Historically, it was Indiana, but today it's Pennsylvania and North Carolina. And what's interesting is this: the Klan groups in the North, most of them do not fly the Confederate flag. The Klan groups in the South do fly the Confederate flag, and there's a rivalry there. But now let me help you make sense of it. Okay. The Klan in the South, a lot of their ancestors were in the Confederacy, right? Now, for those of you who know American history, you will know that there were also blacks who fought in the Confederacy, all right? Black slaves had to fight for their slave masters. My parents are from Roanoke and Salem, Virginia. Okay, Virginia was the seat of the Confederacy. I had ancestors. I'm a descendant of slaves. I had ancestors who fought in the Confederacy. Now, I don't uphold the Confederacy. All right, I could care less about the Confederacy. I honor my ancestors. Without them, I wouldn't be here. But I don't uphold the Confederacy. There are some black people out there who do uphold the Confederacy. They don't condone slavery, but they uphold the Confederacy because the Confederacy was more than just about slavery, all right? So they want to honor their ancestors who lost their lives in the Civil War. Well, guess what? The Klan in the North, they want to honor the lives of their ancestors who died in the Union Army, right? So they're not going to fly the Confederate flag. I mean, and think about this. I want to share something with you that you may not know. You all saw all the mayhem and footage with Charlottesville, right? All right. You were told by the media that they had all gathered there to protest the removal of the Confederate statues, correct? Wrong. All right, that's false. I'm going to tell you why they were there. Yes, there were some people who were there to protest the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue and the other ones. However, the majority of those people were there to start what they call the race war. All right? They call it RAHOWA, R-A-H-O-W-A, RAHOWA. RAHOWA stands for Racial Holy War. This is why every time one of these guys gets busted and his house gets raided, they always find a stockpile of automatic weapons. They've been promising the race war. That's what Dylann Roof was trying to do when he walked into the black church in Charleston, South Carolina, when Robert Bowers walked into the synagogue in Pittsburgh. All right? They're trying to start this race war. Now, they said in order to occupy a piece of public property, to have a rally, a demonstration, or even to set up a lemonade and hot dog stand, you have to have a permit. So you go to the city, you get an application, you fill out your name, and you state your purpose. You cannot very well state, I want to start a race war. You will not get the permit, folks, okay? So you come up with some quasi-legitimate excuse. My ancestors fought in the Civil War, in the Confederacy. I don't want you messing with my heritage. Okay, that's legitimate. Here's your permit. And now once you're papered, you go do whatever you want to do. All right? So they went through all legitimate channels and they got their permit. But now, here's the interesting thing. There were blacks, there were whites, and there were Jews who fought in the Confederacy against the blacks, the whites, and the Jews in the Union Army. So, and there are blacks and Jews today who honor the Confederacy. Why not invite your black and your Jewish counterparts to march in Charlottesville with you? Would that not add more credibility to your cause if for blacks and Jews to say, hey, that's our heritage too, leave it alone? Right. But instead of inviting blacks and Jews, including them, they excluded them. And they marched through the UVA, University of Virginia campus, and the streets of Charlottesville shouting anti-Semitic and racist epithets. So therefore, this rally was not about heritage. It was about hate. That's number one. Number two, it's okay to honor your great-great-great ancestors, despite the fact that you didn't know them, because Civil War ended in 1865. Nobody in Charlottesville was around then, all right, to know those people. But it's okay, you can still honor them, all right? However, while you claim to be honoring your great-great-great-great-grandfather, you are dishonoring the ancestors who you do know, the ones who raised you. You are dishonoring your fathers, your grandfathers, and your great-grandfathers who fought, and many of them lost their lives in World War II. And who were they fighting? The Nazis. And you're going to tell me that you're honoring your great-great-great ancestors, and you're going to dishonor your fathers, your grandfathers, and your great-grandfathers who fought against the Nazis and lost their lives by marching down the streets of Charlottesville with people wearing swastika armbands and flying swastika flags and doing Sieg Heil, Hi Hitler? And what did the Nazis have to do with any heritage in Charlottesville? The Nazis didn't have any heritage in Charlottesville. The Nazis weren't even around during the Confederacy. Adolf Hitler wasn't even born during the Confederacy. So why were the Nazis in Charlottesville? It wasn't about heritage, because they didn't have any. It was about hate. All the media did was go to the courthouse or City Hall and pull the permit and read what it said and report it back to you. We're here to protest the removal of the statues because that's our heritage. That was a lie. That was an excuse to have this rally and have ground zero for testing the RAHOA. There you go.
Are there others that you work with or who are doing similar work?
There are people, who fight racism from all different sides. I don't work with anybody in particular. I'm always happy to work with people. I do what I feel I can do best, where I can contribute the most. I don't know everything by any means, and racism and anti-Semitism is a multifaceted thing, and it needs to be fought on all different fronts. And there are people who fight the other facets their way better than I would be able to do. So I try to contribute what I can do through what I know and the knowledge that I know. And the way it has to be approached is there's no one cure for this kind of thing. Everybody has a different tactic, and we all need that. But what we need to do is we need to concert our efforts. Work in a concerted effort to eradicate racism by communicating with each other. It's like this. If somebody, let's say you hear your next door neighbors fighting, and they're yelling and screaming and throwing pots and pans at each other. You call the police. Usually it's going to be 2 uniformed police officers who show up, knock on the door, they go in, one cop takes the wife to the kitchen, or the cop takes the husband to some bedroom back there, and they get the stories, and they compare them, and then they tell them, y'all need to calm down. Whoever doesn't calm down, click, click, off he goes or she goes. And if they calm down, the cops tell them, all right, y'all behave yourselves, don't make us come back or we're gonna lock you both up. And then the cops leave. That's, very simple, it goes on all the time. However, there's another situation which we hear of all too often, where some husband has come home, he's disgruntled about something, he's lost his job, he's whatever, and now he's holding his wife and kids hostage. And oftentimes, he shoots the wife, shoots the kids, and then sometimes shoots himself. We've heard about those situations as well. So you're aware of that, you call the police. Well, this time, it's not just those 2 uniformed officers who come. They come, but they don't go to the front door. They stand back with a bullhorn and try to talk the guy down. Hey, let the kids out of the house, blah, blah, blah. They come, but another division of the police department comes. It's called the SWAT team. And they're at your front door, they're at your back door, they're on the side of your house, peeping in your window. They might even drop down on your roof from a helicopter. They got that house surrounded. And they got sharpshooters in that SWAT team. And then there's another person from the police department that's there. He's on the phone trying to talk to you to say, hey, we'll get you some help. What do you need? Blah, blah, blah. Let one of the kids go. Let your wife go. This is the hostage negotiator. So you got all these different entities all working for the common goal of saving the lives of those hostages. That is the key goal. Each one is doing what he can. The 2 uniformed cops with the bullhorn, the SWAT team with the sharpshooters, the hostage negotiator, and whoever else, all right? If the bullhorn cops get the guy to send the people out, great. If the negotiator is successful and the guy is cooperating, fine. If the sharpshooter has a bullseye on the hostage taker's forehead and he can shoot that guy without hurting any of the kids and the wife, guess what? That guy is gone. Boom, he's gone, okay? The whole purpose is to rescue those hostages by any means necessary, whichever one can get the job done, but they all are in communication with each other. And that is how we have to address racism and discrimination and anti-Semitism. I can do what I know how to do. I can't do everything. There are others who do that job better than I do, and they need to do what they do. But we need to have that communication so that we all are coordinated.
So we're actually trying to adopt Daryl's philosophy online. So on Minds, it's a fully free speech-based policy, the idea being that when you ban people from social media who are making offensive comments, that just pushes them further down the rabbit hole of radicalization. So what's been your experience online? Do you focus mostly on the real world where the real change happens?
I prefer to meet people face to face. And there are people who will talk to me. There are people who will not talk to me. There are people who have physically attacked me, and that's to be expected. Fortunately, those have been few and far between, and fortunately, I have prevailed, both on the street and in court. So, that does come with the territory. But if you are able to sit down with someone, and this applies to anything. I mean, take race off the table. It doesn't have to be racial. It could be, there are a number of hot topics out here. Say abortion, global warming, nuclear weapons, the war in the Middle East. You're on one side, somebody's on the other side. Give that person a platform. Allow them to air whatever it is they want to say, regardless of how extreme it may be and how much you disagree with it. Just listen to them. Because eventually, you'll be gathering information that if you know is incorrect, you'll be able to refute it when it's your turn to reciprocate. So you want to do that. But in the meantime, learn as much as you can about the other person's point of view, whether it's pro-choice, abortion, whatever it is. Learn as much as you can, because that gives you credibility. When somebody sees that you have done your homework and you know something about their position, their respect meter automatically goes up for you. Even though they may not like you, it's like, whoa, this guy knows what I'm talking about. He knows where I'm coming from. And they're more able to communicate with you. And when you have that, you're able to plant a seed. If you spend 5 minutes with your worst enemy, you will find something in common. If you spend 10 minutes, you will find even more in common. And if you nurture that seed, you are then forging a relationship. If you nurture that relationship, you are then forging a friendship. And by the time you get to this friendship thing, you will have found a lot of things in common. And the more you find in common, the things, the trivial things that you had in contrast, such as the color of your skin, or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, begin to matter less and less. So that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Now,
I've noticed a lot just, trying to have debates with people, convincing doesn't work. You can't force your ideas down their throats. So you're saying listening is always your first step when you walk in, and then, are you trying to debate these people, or are you literally just trying to stay calm, hear what they have to say, and are you refuting them when you're hanging out?
Absolutely, yes. If there's something that I don't agree with, I would let them finish their point. I know I don't agree with it, so I don't have to jump in and say, whoa, stop, no, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. No. Let them get it out. Let them finish. Sometimes they'll hang themselves with their own words. You heard the old saying, give somebody enough rope, but let them finish, okay? And then you make your point. Don't, be transparent. Always be honest, okay? But I'm gonna tell you something. While you are actively learning about someone else, at the same time, you are passively teaching them about yourself. So if they find anything that's non-transparent with you, you don't realize it. You think you're gleaning all this information from them. Well, you are, but you're also subliminally passing on information about yourself to them. If they find anything dishonest or non-transparent, your credibility is shot. The best thing you have is your credibility. And remember this, you only have one opportunity to make a good first impression. You might have a second or third opportunity, maybe, to make an impression, but only one opportunity to make a good first impression. And most people would judge you by the first impression of you. And sometimes you need a repeat visit and more repeat visits. Okay, like I said, people don't change overnight. It's over time, all right? So if you meet somebody and your first impression of them is, I don't like this guy or this girl, and they want to see you again, you're going to say no based on that first impression. But even if you don't agree with them, but you find them to be credible, you say, yeah, I'll meet you again. So you're always selling your credibility. And that's what has enabled me. And when people find out how honest I am, they begin struggling with their own ideology. I don't like to say, when you see these headlines, black musician converts 200 KKK members, blah, blah, blah. No. I did not even convert one, all right? Yes, I am the impetus for over 200 leaving the organization, but I prefer to say they converted themselves. I simply planted the seed and gave them something to think about. And they struggled with that because they had to figure out, well, do they want to continue living a lie or do they want to accept the truth? And that was their decision. And as a result, I brought a few items for you. This is the robe of a grand dragon, state leader. Okay, and this is a robe of an imperial wizard, national leader. tell you, where's it backwards here? As you see, I'm not used to handling these things. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people don't want to ask me. I know some of you all out there are wondering. But I'm going to go ahead and answer the question for you anyway. The first robe I ever got, what did I do with it? I tried it on, yeah. Hey, if I'm going to talk the talk, I'm going to walk the walk. I told you that I'm an honest person. So I'm not going to lie to you. I put it on. I put on the hood. I went and stood in front of the mirror to see what I looked like. I looked stupid, so I took it off. Now, this is what's known as the hood. It's also called a helmet. Both words are synonymous, the hood or the helmet. This is the hood, this is the mask. Members who want anonymity, they don't want you to know who they are, they wear this mask, which is attached by 3 snaps or Velcro, and they peep at you through these eyelets. So they see you, you don't see them. If they don't care that their identity is revealed, they unsnap the mask, pull it off, and the face is exposed under the hood. This is a neo-Nazi flag, okay, given to me by a former, well, he was active at the time. He and I became friends. He no longer uses this. A neo-Nazi leader. And it's a Klan flag. I'll have this inside out. They fly these at their rallies and their marches. Okay, now, this right here, I didn't bring all 200. Did they search your bag at the airport? Sometimes, yeah. But what's funny is sometimes my bag, they'll stop it in the conveyor belt, and the guy, looking, he'll call over the other TSA people, and now I'm standing alone, I'm waiting for my bag to come out, right? And of course, they think it belongs to one of the white guys standing next to me. Okay, this is another Grand Dragon's robe. Okay, green is the color for the grand level, the state level, okay? And blue or purple is the imperial level. So now, you can have either a white cotton robe with green adornments, as you saw right here, or you can have a full green satin robe. It doesn't matter. It's your choice of material. If it's satin, it'll all be one color. If it's a white cotton, it'll have the green adornments or blue or purple adornments. Okay, so this is another Grand Dragon's robe. Let me tell you about this guy. This guy, when I first heard about him, he was, I was a teenager. I was in my late teens. He had been busted, arrested, and charged with conspiring to bomb a synagogue up on Liberty Road in Baltimore. He placed this bomb at the foot of the synagogue, all right? He went to prison for 4 years. He ran the Klan while in prison through his vice dragon on the outside. When he got out, he took over the organization, continued running the Klan. He got busted again, and this time assault with intent to murder 2 black men with a shotgun. He went to prison for 3 years. So I wrote a book on the Klan. I went around the country interviewing leaders and members. I wrote a book called Clandestine Relationships, spelled with a K, not a C. And I wanted to talk to this guy. So I didn't know him, but I knew who he was. I found out what prison he was in. They get transferred around. And I wrote him a letter. And I told him, I'm writing a book on the Klan. I'd like to talk to you. Well, of course, he thought I was white. He didn't know. And he wrote me back, and we had a correspondence. And then around Christmas time, he sent me a Christmas card that he homemade, or I should say cell-made, in the prison. And then in January, he wrote me and said, you know, we've been corresponding now for a while. Why have you not told me you're black? Because this guy was vehemently violent, anti-Semitic, and racist. He was very upset with me. And because apparently he sent one of his Klan people out to check me out, and word got back to him. And I wrote him back and said, hey man, you know, what difference does it make? You told me you're gonna tell me your story. Are you gonna tell your story any differently to a black person than you would to a white person if you're gonna tell the truth? So he wrote me back and said, yeah, you know, you're right, blah, blah, blah. You know, he says, send me your phone number. I'm getting out next month. Give me a month after I get out to get my stuff together, and I'll give you a call. Because the second time when he went to prison, his wife ran off with somebody. He lost his house. He lost everything. So he wanted to, you know, get out, plant his roots again, get his Klan under control, and then he would meet with me. So I sent him my number. He called me, and we met. Like I said, he was vehemently anti-Semitic and racist and had a penchant for violence. But we kept meeting. Now, to be in the Klan, you don't make money being in the Klan. It's like Boy Scout leader. You know, you have to have a regular job. It's just a title, Grand Dragon, Imperial Wizard, etc. You might get a small stipend from the dues that your members pay, but not enough to put food on your table or pay your rent or mortgage. You have to have a regular job. This guy's regular job, when he was in the Klan as Grand Dragon, he was a Baltimore City police officer. Okay? This is his uniform. He was not an undercover cop in the Klan. He was a bona fide Klansman on the Baltimore City police force. And there are others. He went on to become one of my best friends. He got out of the Klan, and this is why, thank you. This is why he gave me his Klan robe and his uniform so I can take it around on my lectures and show you people can change.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
All right, let's do some questions.
Guys, we only unfortunately have time for 2 questions because of some serious time constraints, but please,
Faster you go.
Make them count.
Hello. You mentioned how you would talk to all these people and, you know, you'd convert them over time. Like, I want to say convert. I don't know if you would use those words personally. But one of the problems I find happens a lot today is you will talk to someone, they will agree with you, they'll be, like, completely on the other side. You know, I've talked to people who were, you know, radical communists and stuff like that who, you know, tell me everything, and we end up agreeing. But then, like, maybe a week or 2 later, I hear the exact same thing coming out of them. That, in fact, they were just talking to me to use me as, like, a cover so they could keep going. Has that ever happened to you? Is that, like ever run into an issue where someone's just used you as kind of like a PR move?
People have tried that, but as I said, you know, I've been doing this now for 30 years, and you're able to decipher which ones, you know, are trying to get publicity or trying to make a point so they can gain something else. No, you know, you can weed those out, but also legitimately, some of them will, you know, agree with you because you're making sense at that moment, and then they go back to their group,
Echo chamber or something.
Echo chamber, and you know, and they fall off the wagon like an alcoholic, like AA, you know.
It's almost like an addiction, kind
of. Exactly. So that's why it's important to sell your credibility so you can have a return visit and a return visit until they're strong enough to hold their own.
And just just one more thing. Did you ever talk to Alfred Thompson, the police chief of Charlottesville?
I did not talk to him. No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Daryl.
Hi.
I have deep respect for you and what you do,
Thank you.
I tell anyone that will listen about you and Louis Theroux. Maybe you two can team up at some point on something. But basically, my question is, so a lot of people perceive you as crazy for doing what you do, but there's some amount of, okay, well, he's black, so he's probably not going to be joining the KKK or the neo-Nazis. I really agree with your premise of you need to give people a path to redemption and coming back from the edge. But as a white guy, how would I approach the same people without myself becoming radioactive, appearing like I'm trying to join the KKK or the neo-Nazis? Like, is there a way that I could do the same thing that you're doing? Or, do I have to go to Louis Farrakhan in the Muslim Brotherhood in Harlem or something like that? Because I would like to do something like what you're doing. I just don't know really how to do it.
I believe, that it is our responsibility as human beings, as Americans, despite what color we are, to talk to our fellow Americans. Not blacks talking to blacks, whites talking to whites, but we should be able to crosstalk. You should be able to go to the black community or your own community, because what it is it's our community, and I would start doing that. Whoever it is you want to talk to, whether it's Farrakhan's people or the KKK or alt-right, whoever, but be transparent. Let them know, that say, listen, I don't agree with your points of view, but I want to learn from you. I want to learn why you feel that I should. I want you to enlighten me. And people always feel that they have some power. And okay, he wants enlightenment, I'm going to give him enlightenment. And that will usually start the conversation. And listen to them, but in advance, study their ideology. Whether it's Nation of Islam or Marcus Garvey or whatever movement you want to approach, or the Klan or the alt-right, whatever. Study that ideology, so you have that knowledge, because then they start respecting you, and then you can go back and forth, and you will plant seeds. Because they're not going to listen to anything if you don't show that you have some kind of knowledge of it.
A couple years back, I actually, and this is kind of what I'm talking about, appearing radioactive, is a couple years back I read Mein Kampf to really, understand what that mentality is. And I actually just last week ordered the Turner Diaries to get an understanding of what this is. But I'm sure I'm on a watch list now, by the way, and I'm sure tons of people are gonna.
I got a copy of the Turner Diaries and Mein Kampf.
But yeah, I agree. It's like you really have to get into the mindset and dive into the radioactive core to really get there. So anyway, I appreciate it.
Thank you for your question.
For those of you, thank you. For those of you who are not familiar with Mein Kampf, that's the story of Adolf Hitler. And the Turner Diaries is a fictional book written by a fellow named William Pierce. He wrote it under the name Andrew McDonnell, but his real name was William Pierce, and he headed up the most violent racist group in this country at one time called the National Alliance, headquartered in West Virginia. He died a few years ago, but the Turner Diaries has become the white supremacist Bible, and that's what Timothy McVeigh read before he bombed the Oklahoma City Federal Building. It's what a group of racists known as the Order read and patterned themselves after when they murdered the Jewish talk show host, Alan Berg. So it's a very, very dangerous book.
Guys, I think we should all stand up and give a massive standing ovation.
Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
No words I can say can be as eloquent and in such a deep, raspy, yet silky voice. Unbelievable. That was truly incredible. I mean, this was a real treat. This was a TED Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for an exhilarating day. I think it was a massive success. I had a ton of fun, and hopefully you did too. as exemplified by this talk that you just heard, the takeaway is that dialogue, not violence, prevails. To the haters, trolls, and proto-fascists, we say that you lost, and you will continue losing because civility and reason will always defeat barbarism. And with that, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to toss back a few. So for those of you calling a night, we bid you adieu. We want to say thank you to you for your attendance. Thank you for the amazing staff that was here, for everyone who worked on this. Be safe, be merry. If you have any questions or if you'd like to share your feedback with us as event organizers, please find one of us wearing a fancy jacket, I guess. The dashing gentlemen somewhere in the back are all part of the team. And for those that have a yellow wristband, I believe that's what it is, please start lining up toward the back of the room, and we will usher you into another room where you will get some additional information regarding the after party. Oh, yeah, the after party wristband, which is this, whatever, it's yellow, gold, mustard. It's really mustard. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Oh, it's the red, black, and yellow after party thingy. Please go to the back door and they'll guide you. Good night.